I'm talking about history, not by the books, not by evolutionary history of human beings or the Big Bang Theory. We're looking at a vehicle made from history itself. In the early 1940s, a vehicle made for the American military was commissioned as a mobile command vehicle designed to carry troops and cargo over terrain that most vehicles weren't even accessible to pass. And that vehicle is a Jeep. No, I'm not talking about the Jeep Wrangler or the jeepney of the Philippines. We're looking at the vehicle that started the era of the Philippine car culture, and that is the Jeep Willys MB. So, what exactly is the Jeep MB Willys? Well, let me give you an explanation. The Jeep Willys MB was a 1940s era military Jeep designed by the US car company called Jeep. Yes, you heard me. The car company Jeep first made the Willys in 1940 all the way to 1942, thus giving it the name military vehicle, or also known as Jeep Model B, or simply the Willys, or the Ford GPW, or General Purpose Vehicle as its full name. The Jeep Willys was powered by a 4-speed manual transmission, all-wheel drive, and it wasn't like any other vehicle you see today. It's a stripped-down, bare-boned, naked military vehicle designed for carrying troops before it was a symbol of culture to the Philippines. This vehicle had no air cons, no anti-lock brakes, no doors, no roof, no cruise control, no power steering. It was basically just a simple, basic looking car that was made for the military for the 1940s. But in 1950s, the US military ended World War II with the Japanese versus American independence of the Philippines on June 12. So, what exactly happened in the 1950s after the Jeep retired in war? Well, it's simple. Jeep was then later replaced by other legendary military vehicles of the era, such as the GMC M135 and the military Hummer. Also, Toyota did follow up with the Mega Cruiser in 1996. So, the Philippines decided to do one thing. They decided to first make their very first car culture in the 1950s, and that is starting off with the shell of a Jeep MB Willys left by the US Army in 1950, thus giving it one singular name, which then gave popularity to the Philippine roadway network, called the jeepney, or simply the Jeep. So what are the differences between a civilian Jeep and the military Willys MB? Well, it's simple. The MB Willys was first introduced by Jeep in 1941, before World War II happened, and since it was basically a 3-year marketing product for the US military, it was only designed to be well used for the military. It's famously known for its ruggedness, capability, and raw simplicity. No nonsense or whatever. It's just a basic old school military Jeep that made Americans feel proud of what the Jeep symbolizes. The Jeep Willys only had 50 horsepower. Yes, let me tell you why. The Jeep MB was really slow. It wasn't fast, it wasn't powerful. No V6, no V8, no Hemi, no RB26. It was basically just using an inline 4, a straight standard engine, very slow but very durable. The Jeep can take the punishment that no other vehicle could ever take in the modern day world. The Jeep MB was known fully by its name as the General Purpose Vehicle by Ford Motor Company, and in fact What exactly happened after World War II? Well, it's simple. The Philippine car culture started in that era with the basics of the MB Willys body being stripped down, modified into a passenger provincial bus known as, well, the Jeep or Jeepney. For almost 64 years, the Jeep celebrates its time as the greatest Philippine road vehicle ever produced. And guess what? Car manufacturers from Japan started importing parts for the jeepneys like Isuzu, Mitsubishi, and mostly Toyota. Why? Because Toyota decided to make a Jeep for themselves too. In 1951, they made the best look like Jeep ever made, and that is the Toyota Land Cruiser. There has been a simple question that everyone bogs about. Why did the Jeep BJ20 from Toyota look more of a Jeep MB Willys? Well, it's simple. Both of those vehicles were built in the same era. Toyota made the BJ20 in 1951. That was also the year that Philippines started to make car culture with the Jeep in the 1950s. But the Jeep Willys, it stayed pretty much in the years of World War II. So that means it was built in 1940. The BJ20 was made in 1951, years after World War II had ended. So that means one colloquial fact. The Jeep BJ20 by Toyota is basically a Japanese counterpart of the Jeep MB used by Americans. So how did Jeepney get the idea for Philippine car culture, since Philippines was all about economical and world-class economy? Well, here's the thing. Before those modern-day sports cars ruled this Asian land, it was basically just the Jeep. Why? Because in Philippines, they called the jeepney king of the Philippine Road System, which is basically true because this popular mode of transportation was used as a provincial bus in the province and the bustling streets of the Manila and Baguio regions, thus making the Jeep a true landmark of the street. And it has evolved with the Philippines since the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 1990s, and then today. But ever since the jeepneys were no longer in production, modernized mini buses were now being evolved today. But for those who really are historic about old school classic cars, they provided with the Jeep. In the US, they have the Jeep Wrangler, which is ironic because the Jeep Wrangler and the Philippine Jeepney were based just solely on one vehicle, and that is the Willys Model B. That is the story of how Jeep really became what it is today. It grew up in the harshness of World War II, then it became a global icon of the Philippines. It now represents something else. The freedom and ruggedness of the Jeep wasn't just because it was built, it was made. It was predominant of its era until 54 years it grew old and went into retirement. But people say it wasn't retirement. It was a status. It was a biology. It's a evolutionary timeline of what vehicles were like in their history before going out of the production and being replaced by a newer capable brand. The Jeep never stays away from that period. It became the period itself. The Jeep was more than just a story, it's a legend. A legend that brought the Philippine roadways to life with its classic and timeless recognizable shape, it still is the greatest off-road vehicle to have ever existed in Philippine car culture. Thank you for watching. Make sure you guys go comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Bye.